Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie Room. Well, we are on day 3 of the outside Beastie project, and what an amazing couple of days we have had, actually getting the footings in, getting all of that down, and I mean, we've done all of that in 2 days, and bearing in mind, remember we said in the video, we have no rear access to our back garden. There is no way to get into our back garden other than through the house. Now obviously it's a bit of a nightmare coming through the house. Luckily we're doing this is summertime, so we're actually a little bit cleaner. You imagine if we were doing this in the winter and it's wet and muddy and oh my god, it'd be terrible. So we're a little bit lucky we're doing it in the summertime, so going through the house is not such a major issue. We've deliberately not decorated or done anything indoors, purely until we get this back garden sorted out. Once we've done that, then we can get going on the house, which I'm sure will make Camera Lady very happy. But it all takes a bit of time and we've got to do it all in order. So today what we are looking at is starting on the woodwork, starting to put the floor in place, build that up, get everything weather treated and what have you, and yeah, just get it all down. So let's not hang about anymore, a little bit less chit chat. Let's go and see what the boys got up to today. I'll see you soon. Well, here we are on day 3, and as you can see from the last video, we've got all of our support system underneath now, so all the hard stonework and everything is all in place. And as you can see there, the boys are starting to bring in some of the timbers, because today we're looking at making up the floor. Now as you can see, it's a lovely sunny day today, really nice. It's 8 o'clock in the morning and we're cracking on. Now, as we said before, one of the problems we've had with this build is the fact that everything has to come through the house, all of it. So it's all a little bit of a logistical nightmare, and as you saw from the first video, we've had everything unloaded onto the driveway, which isn't the most ideal thing, leaving it out there all the time, but we brought all the expensive lightweight stuff around the back, and all we left outside was the brickwork and the timber, really, because that's nice and heavy. So we sort of thought that that'd probably be okay, and it's proved to be all right so far. Now, as you can see there, Tucker's measuring out the beams that will be running across the top of the stone treads that he's put in already. So we have blockwork all around the outside, and then we have these briquettes that were concreted in, going across from front to back. And now obviously all the timbers that will actually produce the main ground floor framework. I remember doing what I was always taught when I was learning to do carpentry and stuff: measure twice, cut once. And I must be honest, so far we've had very little in the way of offcuts. You can see that tiny offcut down on the floor now underneath the saw bench. That's about as big as it gets, and so we've had very minimal wastage, which is absolutely fantastic, because the price of timber nowadays is extortionate compared to what it was before lockdown. Lockdown has created a huge knock-on effect in terms of prices for many things, and as we all know, general living expenses have been much more expensive since lockdown. That, and rolled in with Brexit as well, everything's become far more expensive. So we have to try and be as cute as possible and save in as many places as we possibly can. Now it's an interesting thing here. Now, even though we know we are completely square, you'll notice that Tucker's actually measuring every single one, and this is to make sure that it all falls exactly into place. Just a few mil short or a few mil over can start causing bows in the actual surrounding edge timbers, which is the outside framework, which we don't want. We want everything to run true, and it'll all come in nice and neat at the end of the day. You can see John working away in the back there, and he is now painting all of these ground timbers in blackjack, which is basically to preserve the wood. The wood itself is already coated and ingrained in a wood preservative. And this is something that we were talking about actually on the day, that timber nowadays, although it is treated, it's a very minimal treat really. It's pressure treated, and much of the timber we have nowadays is not like it used to be. It's almost conveyor belt fed, so it's literally cut, treated and on the shop floor in no time at all. So it doesn't get much of a time to actually sit and stand. And we were talking about fence panels and the fact that many fence panels, although they look lovely when you pick them up, and they're quite often still wet from the treatment, once they dry out they crack, split, knots fall out and all sorts. The actual quality of timber nowadays isn't what it used to be, which is a shame because the quality's gone down, the price has gone up. Now, as you can just about see that beam that John has painted now, that's all covered in blackjack. And what will happen is eventually, once it's all done, all of those beams that are painted will then be flipped over so that the paint is on the downside, and that will help us keep any moisture coming up and interfering with the timbers, and hopefully prolong their life. So just a little bit of extra now will hopefully give us years more to come down the line. Now this is the exciting part. I think once we start getting into the timber, this is where things really start to move along, take shape, and we get to see a little bit more of what the finished product will eventually be. Now you also notice there as well that when we started this project, we made sure that we cut the lawn back, cut the hedge back, pretty much everywhere that we needed to was literally cut back, just to make life a little easier, to save a bit of time as well. You know, you don't want to be mucking around with that when you're trying to build stuff. We have left a walkway. Someone mentioned in the last video about the problems of growth with the hedge and the trees at the back, and we have actually left a walkway all the way around this space so that we can access all sides of the building, and so nothing will end up being a problem to the building at all, because we can get in and we can trim that hedge, because privet just grows and grows. So that will need to be trimmed probably, you know, 8 or 10 times during the course of the summer, and probably once or twice in the winter as well. So we've left a nice walkway and we can get in, trim these things back. We've tried to think of everything as we go along. Now we fast forward it now, and you can see there that most of the timbers are now painted. The block work all the way around the edge was also painted as well, and on top, there you go, cup of coffee for the boys. So now they've got everything in, stand back and admire the work. It's always good to literally just keep looking, keep checking things, seeing where you are, making sure that you're happy with everything. Because the last thing we want to do is actually produce something and then think halfway through, oh, we've done that wrong, or we should have changed it, or whatever.
So it's important that we do that. Now you can see there the guys have flipped the boards over. We're now painting what would have been the base of the board and the tops. So they're going to get them all cleaned up, all painted up. And that'll create a nice moisture barrier. Now, it's quite difficult actually because we've speeded this up. And I've also edited this through because it took quite a long time to actually paint all these timbers. You'll see there that some of it you sort of sit and think, well, that one hasn't been done, but this one hasn't been done, but they have all been done. Everything has been absolutely covered. Because of the editing process, we don't get to see all of it. But everything has been done. Everything's been painted. And you saw there, Tucker had literally just screwed in the front edge one on the left hand side. It's screwed into the sides. So we're now starting to fix all the beams together and create that framework. So they're all going to go back down now, all get fixed in place as we work our way through. And this will give us a really, really nice solid base. It looks like the painting is complete now. Looks like John will just finish the last bit. So now going to flip the boards over and see where we are. It does take a little bit of time, this. So now we're just going in now, and you can see there Tucker's checking the square. Make sure that we're actually still square to the blockwork, and our frame is square. And then what they're rolling out now, this is a damp-proof membrane, which will go over the top of the beams, so that our boards, when we put our floorboards down, they will be protected from any damp that's coming through. So everything is helping everything. So we've got the blackjack down to stop some of the damp entering the timbers. We've now got the membrane down, and now we're bringing in our first sheet of ply. Now we went for ply on the floor instead of what is often used is like loft boards, and we've just felt that we can get a better flooring and a better stability from these ply boards. Now this layer that's going on now is only the very first layer. This is the base layer. So this isn't what will be the floor that we will be walking on eventually. This is the base layer. So it will be like a double skinned floor. And this will also help out with our insulation. So our insulation will go on top of these boards that you see now, and then we will board on top of those as well. So it will be like a double skin. Now we've seen many of them online, and it was one of the things that I questioned with Tucker. Many of them online will literally put a framework down on the floor like the ones that we've seen there that we painted. They would then lay Celotex in between those, so directly on top of the floor, but leaving an air gap underneath, and then board on top of that, and that is their floor. But we felt that we wouldn't get the insulation required by doing that. So by double skinning it, we are literally locking in that base, and there will be no moisture and no air, no cold coming up through the floor into the building. And if you think about it in a logical sense, it should give us a far warmer area than having just the Celotex stuck between the boards and then the floor. So we are double skinning the whole thing. Now this obviously causes a little bit more expense, but it should in theory ease some of the heating bill, because this is something else. When we think about this long term, this building will hopefully be running for as long as I'm running, and it should help to save the money over those years. So for a little bit more what's the word, a little bit more money spent now, it should save in the long run. As you can see now, this is quite an important thing now. When we start putting the boards down, you all imagine that these boards are all cut, they're machine cut, but believe it or not, they're not all square, so it can actually cause a little bit of a headache. You would imagine that if your floor was square, you just drop your boards on and everything would run true, but it's not the case. They are not square, so there is small differences between each one, and that can throw the square of the building out. So as you can see there, Tucker's measuring every single area and making sure that it all fits into place nice and square and true. Very important. And it's a nice thing actually, because to actually see that extra effort being made to ensure that this actually goes right. Now you can see there also, he's just flicked down that string line, which is the red line on the board now, and that will show where our beams are underneath, so that when we come to screw them down, we don't actually miss the beam. We will be screwing directly into the centre of the beam, and that will make sure that we always have an absolutely perfect screw cut. Another coffee out there then. I did see in the comments on the last one, there didn't seem to be many coffees out. We were running backwards and forwards all day long. The kettle was never cold. Now, so it's important to keep the coffee running. But yeah, we fast forward and you don't always see it coming out. But yeah, they were kept with coffee all day long. Very important. I remember this, as I said in the first one, when I was landscaping and that, you know, you really appreciate a cup of coffee. So now you can see there that the membrane has been laid down. The membrane is also fixed to the boards as well. So that's what you can see they were doing there. They stapled a membrane to the boards, and that keeps it off the floor. It keeps it nice and tight, keeps it off the floor. So you actually end up creating like an air barrier underneath there as well. There's the next board in place. And you can see now that it's slowly taking a bit of shape. And it does take a bit of time. It really does take a bit of time. So important that we, you notice we're always measuring, checking out, making sure everything is as it should be. Again, fixing in the beams now. So everything is fixed in place. See what a glorious sunny day it was, but not too hot. It was really quite pleasant. Now I think when we seeing these guys now, they're screwing all these beams into place, so they're all solid, all in the right place. Now bearing in mind the actual boards have only been screwed on the edges at the moment. There you go, you see that string line gone and been used again now. So it puts the red line right the way across the timber. More membrane to come out. We're getting ready for the next board now. And when we finished the floor, we were doing a little bit of a count up to see what materials we still needed, because we were getting close on running out of screws. And we had used, by the time the floor was done and what have you, we'd used roughly 800 screws, which is quite phenomenal, really. 800 screws. You wouldn't think it. You'd look at it and think, a couple of boxes, there's 200 in a box. A couple of boxes, that should see us through. But no, we'd used 800 screws up at this point. Well, by the time the whole floor was down. So the membrane's in place again. We're just working our way across. Now we're coming in with the next board. I just love seeing it all come together when it's like this. We're now looking at cutting the back one. There we go. It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, and it is just so satisfying watching it slowly take shape and pick up. Now, one of the things that we looked at here, you notice there we've got a rather large offcut there. These will all be saved, and one of the things that we wanted to do here, or one of the things that Tucker was keen on doing, was to not have small offcuts patching the floor, because yeah, you got that offcut that John stood on now. We could have used that, turned around the other way, and that would have made another piece of floor. So we got that one, and we got the one before it. So that in turn would have given us a couple more, and it might have filled in that gap in the corner up at the top, but it wouldn't necessarily give us the structural integrity that we're looking for. Although they would be screwed to the beams, so they would still be solid, but it would just be another edge. And yeah, we wanted to try and do it in as larger pieces as possible, so that we didn't have these offcuts in place, especially when we come round to doing the sides and things like that. So we sort of we're probably being a little bit extravagant. We're using a little bit more than we need to, but in the grand scheme of things, we're looking at, you know, a couple of sheets over the whole build, so it's not a massive thing, but it will give us a cleaner finished product. And as you can see there, we're almost to the end now. And I think we've got another beam and a bit, or another board and a bit, I should think. We will be in place. So the end beams are being screwed into place now. I'm just measuring out again, make sure everything's correct. Yeah, I think we're what, 1, 2, 3 beams away, I think. Notice the sun's disappeared. We've got a bit of cloud covering now, and the wind was slowly picking up. We're getting a little bit more wind again. Starting to get, oh look, there you go. It's getting a little bit more blustery. Now we're putting down the rest of the membrane in place now. So that will be the last piece going in there. Now this damp proofing membrane is very important. It stops any moisture content coming up from the floor. And as we said in the beginning, our ground here is very, very dry. And that grass, although it looks quite good, is actually really patchy. There's as much soil coming through as there is grass. It's very, very dry here. There we go, we're up to the end now. We'll have to go and get another board. There we go. We'll get that one fixed down. String line back in again. Everything's still sitting nice and level. No ridges or bumps. This is one of the reasons you'll see Tucker frequently going through in the video, sweeping off the beams and sweeping off the sides before the beams went down. Make sure there's no little stones, anything in the way that will throw the level out. And it's often little things like this. I've watched many videos over on YouTube and seeing different bits and pieces happening, and it's the little things that often make the difference. You know, why create yourself a problem later on when just a little bit of extra care now can save you so much time and effort? So that's that one screwed in. Now we're now using the offcuts that we had will actually fit down the side. There you go. And they're going to be full size down there. As you can see, because of that area there, we're not going to be able to cut it. Big boards, there is no point because it'd still be one piece. So we can use those large offcuts that we've got to cover them out. And there comes in the last corner piece. Get that one in. That'll give us another offcut, and then that should finish that ending. There we go. Now it's surprising, and this does seem like quite a long video, to get all of this in. This took best part of the day to actually get all these cut, get all the beams cut, painted, all in place. And yeah, it took a fair bit of time today to actually get this down. And it's interesting, you can see just how time consuming it actually really is to put this sort of stuff into practice. Now we've still got to screw the floor down yet, so it's screwed in like corners and what have you, but we've still got to run up through the centres and screw all of those in. So that is the last piece now gone in over there, and that is our floor completed. I think we've got one tiny little bit in the corner that we can't see behind where John's foot is now. I think there's one little bit over there. And that is us done. The floor is now in place. And as we said before, this is the base floor. So we will sellotext on top of this and then board it out again. And that will give us a lovely insulation barrier. And also some soundproofing as well. And another interesting thing that we've been thinking about here is by making sure that this is all as solid as it absolutely could be possible, we should alleviate vibration and things within the room at a later date. So we won't get any movement within the building. It needs to be structurally absolutely solid, as if it was a brick built building. Because the last thing we want is vibration and movement when we're moving around inside it. Because obviously when we start to breed our spiders again, they don't like shocks and things like that when they're on their egg cases. So if we've got creaking floors and things that move and vibrate, then this will cause us problems later on. Now then, you can see now John is now screwing down the whole of the floor. This did take a little bit of time. And yeah, there's an awful lot of screws. As I said, it took about 800 screws to put this down. We also done one back panel in that as well. But yeah, a lot of screws. And you can see now Tucker's sweeping it all off, because what we're going to do now is we are going to use the floor base now to set out the back panel. so the back wall. And this is what the guys are starting to sort out now. As you can see there, when we were talking earlier on about the offcuts, you can see that's only a small pile of offcuts down on the floor there. So we've been very, very conscientious of the floor. A little bit of advertising there for Tucker. I'm sure they do that on purpose. John's a big old unit, and yeah, I think he stands in front of the camera there, and a little bit of advertising. We don't mind that. Now, what we're doing now, we are trying to. Tucker is trying to show me what the finished height is going to be, and I've been very conscientious of the height, and I couldn't quite see it the way he was saying it because we marked a stick. So I said to him, let's make up a frame so that I can see what the actual overall height is going to be. And that's what we've done here. John is holding up this frame so we can see, because my neighbour has actually got a summer house at the end of their garden, and I didn't want to be overpowering that. You know, it was important that we have a good working height in the building, but it was also important that I didn't want my neighbours to walk out and think, oh my God, look, you know. So we put a beam up. There you go, again, get another coffee. We put a beam up, and then we could see across the gardens, and we could see just about how high it was going to actually end up being. So now we can. We're working on the back panel. The framework's being put together now, and the back is obviously going to be a little bit lower than the front, and this is to allow water to drain off, so that when it rains, obviously the roof will get soaking wet, and the rain will all run off to the back. Now, another thing now you might be wondering, you sort of sit and think, wow, there's a lot of beams going in here. Well, what we've done was, I think if I remember correctly, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we put the beams went in at around about 400. There were either 400 or 500 gap between the beams, and this basically works out so that when we put our plasterboard and also our insulation, when our insulation and everything goes in, it will all be in the right place. There you go, that coffee's just arrived. So yeah, so we literally run them through. So, you know, there's a method in the madness. Everything is done with something else in mind. So we're thinking about our insulation, we're thinking about our plasterboards later on, so that when we come to fix these things, they've actually got something to fix too. Very important. So now it's looking like we've got most of the framework in by the look of things. So you now need to square this off. So now Tucker's marking it all out to make sure that everything is in the right place. Our beams are all in the right place. They all need to be fixed. Now this sort of effort now will save us an awful lot of time later on. We don't want to be guessing where we're screwing things, or offering insulation up and finding there's a gap there so the insulation don't sit properly. We need to make sure everything is measured so that the next thing fits in. It's just one big jigsaw puzzle. You can see what Tucker's doing now. John's finishing off fixing some of the corner flooring over there. He's down there. It shouldn't be long now, and we should start getting the boards in. So far, we kept looking up at this point in the day because the weather was starting to turn a little bit, and we kept an eye out. And it's so far so good. We're staying dry, but it is starting to get a little cloudy, and that wind is picking up. There you go. We're getting all these fixed in now. Now, you remember when we started this project, and many people ask me, you know, why didn't you just build it yourself? Well, yeah, I could have done, and as we said in the last video, it would have taken me an awful lot longer. You know, being on my own, it would be quite difficult, and also as well as you've seen them coming through fixing all of these beams in. My back would have been in bits. My legs would have been killing me. So yeah, this is definitely a younger man's job. I'm getting a little bit old now for scrummaging around on the floor for a full day doing this sort of stuff. And I consider myself quite fit for my age, but yeah, this is grueling really. And 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. It would have been lovely. I would have been in my element. But now I'm a little bit stiffer in the joints. And as normal, you know, as we get older, we're not as strong as we used to be either. So actually lifting up these panels and what have you is hard work. And they are very, very heavy. By the time you've got all your timber on and everything else, they are incredibly heavy. And although I get camera lady to help me with many things. I mean that she doesn't turn her nose up at anything. If I say, oh, I need a bit of help, she's there, and she's always helping me out. But she would not have been able to have lifted these panels. You know, once we get them ply sheets down, that is one very heavy wall, and yeah, you'll see in a moment when we actually stand it up. Once it's all fixed on, the boards are fixed on and they're all cut. It took the three of us to actually lift it, and I say these two, John and Tucker, are by no means weak. You know, they're both fit, strong lads, and yeah, it still took like three of us because of the overall size. You know, you don't want it bending and flexing in the middle. So it's a lot of timber to be humping about. So they're now getting everything fixed down, and we can just have a look, and they can get everything checked out ready before they cut them. So Tucker's literally just fixing the bottoms in. And the main thing is now is we literally made up this rear end just purely so that we could get an idea of how things were going to look and give us a little bit of a head start on tomorrow. So we're going to get them all fixed in place now. It all done. I'm not worrying about the very end. We've literally now just run I think he's just run the chalk line down through the top of the board so we know where to cut. It's quicker and easier to do it like this than it is to do them all individually. There's no need at this point. We can literally just use the framework beam and cut directly up to that. There you go, measured into place. There you go, there goes that string line. Just drop that in so it's now got something to follow. We can work our way through, cutting the tops off. Nice and easy. And as you can see there, we've got one more beam at the very end that we will look at. That will be done. There you go. There you can see. Now that is a heavy board. And now we get an idea of just what it looks. This was probably the most exciting part of the day for me, to actually now get an idea of the size and where we are. And you can see on the fence line there just where it was.
Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie room. Well, we have now completed the base, the floor of the new Beastie room, and you can actually see now where we're starting to show some actual size. So when we had the footings in, it was still quite difficult to envisage how sort of what the size was going to be. Now now we've actually got the floor down. This is the first layer of the floor, so it's not the actual floor that we will be walking on. This is the base layer of the floor. So then what we done was we put a vapor barrier down on the stone, which separates the wood from the ground below. As we said before in the first video, we're lucky here. We're very dry. I don't know if we're slightly raised in our area here, but our ground is very dry. So we literally put a vapor barrier down, then we put the first boards down, and on top of some bearers, and then that is going to be the actual base, as it were, to the ground. So from the ground to that base. Then what we're going to do then is that will be we're going to use Celotex across the top of that, and then we will board on top of that again, and that will give us our insulation barrier from the ground up. This will all become apparent when we get to start filming it being done. Now what else did we do? So we basically got all of the floor out, laid out, all measured up, nice and square, everything's in place. We've also, you'll notice there as well, we also coated the timbers which are going to be closest to the ground. We also covered the timbers that are going to be on the fascia going up as well. So everything that's at ground level we've covered in blackjack, which protects it from rot and everything else and stops moisture rising up through it as well. So it's just an added little bit of protection. A lot of people don't bother, but you know, I felt it was actually worthwhile. Get that in, get that covered, and then it just gives us that little bit more peace of mind as to where we're going, and hopefully add some life to the whole structure overall. Now so yeah, so we basically got all of the flooring, part one of the floor anyway, and then you will see at the end of the video the guys actually made the back wall. Now it wasn't quite finished, there was still one strip on the edge that needed to be done, but what this done was, by getting that back up, it also gave us an idea of where our heights were going to be, because you would have seen there we need to be under 2.4 to stay within regulations. So what we also wanted to do, something I was very keen on making sure, is our neighbour's garden. On one side of our neighbour's garden is a massive great big privet hedge, so nothing is overlooked or seen. The hedge is actually taller than the building's going to be, and on the other side it's open. And on our neighbours, they have a summer house and a shed and everything at the end of their garden. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't overshadowing anything. Luckily, the sun comes around to them first, so they get all of the sun, and we sort of get almost like second-hand sun, if you like, because it's coming in from that side, so they get it all first. So we're not going to shadow them in terms of blocking out any light. But also I didn't want it to be to a height where it was a little bit imposing on our neighbour's garden, you know, so you don't want them coming out looking up and thinking, oh my God, look at that, it looks enormous. So we were very, very keen. So we've kept it under the 2.4. We've kept it as low as we can possibly go, but still have enough headroom for me to be able to work and do what I need to do. So very, you know, from the outset, I wanted to make sure that, you know, we didn't upset our neighbours. We don't want to encroach on any more than necessary. So yeah, so you would have seen there that we actually made up a little jig, because Tucker was explaining to me about the height, and we tried to put it on a stick, and I just couldn't envisage it. I couldn't see how it was going to look in comparison to our neighbour's garden. So we ended up, I set about making a little tiny thing on 2 legs, bit of board, and it gives you an absolutely ideal. You can stand back and think, oh yeah, that's the height. That's where we're going to be on theirs. And we are in actual fact roughly the same height as their summer house next door. So it's nice that it will keep it sort of fairly uniform across the gardens. And it will stop it standing out any more than it needs to be. So yeah, it's very important that we done that. And we took a little bit of time mucking around doing it, but it was well worth it in the end. And then that also gave us, because we had the height now at the front, we could work out what could be our point at the back, bearing in mind that we do need a, I think we've gone for like a 50mm fall across the shed, so it's going to literally drain off 50mm higher at the front. So that gave us our finished height at the back. So they built the back wall, and then we put that up, and that now, as you saw there, we literally just stood it up temporarily because it was late in the day now. They were just sort of getting ready to knock off. So we literally just threw it up there just to give an idea, to see a little bit of size and dimension and get a bit of aspect to it. So that's where we are. Next time we will be throwing up the sides and the front, and hopefully we'll see how we get on. The weather forecast for the next few days is a little bit iffy, so yeah, fingers crossed we don't have too much trouble. But what an exciting day or so we've had, literally just getting this floor and everything in. It's so cool. I can't tell you how bleeding excited I am. This is really cool. Every day we're getting a little bit closer to where we want to be. So yes, I hope you're enjoying the journey, and I hope we're explaining everything as we go through, and keeping you up to speed. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions or whatever, you know, throw them in the comments, stick them down there. We'll always do our best to try and answer things. Yeah, I hope you're enjoying this ride. This is so exciting. Right then, don't forget, be calm, be gentle, and love your spider. I'll see you soon, guys.